review your day, go through that grid, important, not important, urgent, not urgent. Can you do now? Can you plan for later? Can you delegate? Can you get rid? And it's hard. You've got to be really critical. Go through your day and say, I've just spent 15 minutes of my lunch touching up that display. Does it really need to be done? Or could I benefit more? Not should I, because should comes with guilt. Could I benefit more from having a glass of water that I haven't had since 8 o'clock this morning, actually having a bite of my lunch and going outside for 5 minutes and using the loo and maybe getting a cup of tea? What is, and this is the question, right? What will the children benefit from more? If you say, what is going to benefit the children more? Everything goes through that lens. Sometimes the teachers, because it is such a passion, we do sometimes do things, I'm talking from experience here, that we want to do rather than doing something that we need to do. It's hard because you enjoy doing that. You need to ask yourself, will it benefit the children and will it benefit you?
Hi, I'm the self-development coach, Johnny Lawrence, and welcome to the Self-Development Podcast. Today, I'll be talking with Charlie Burley. Charlie spent 8 years plus as a school teacher, and although he enjoyed teaching, over time, both his health and his happiness began to decline. Fast forward to now, and Charlie is the teacher's health coach that helps teachers feel great, find balance, and forge healthier, happier lives. How are you today, Charlie?
Not bad, mate. Thank you for the introduction. That's brilliant. You can be my hype man.
Mate, I'm up for it. Yeah, I'm up for it. I actually, I didn't want to embarrass you. There was so much more, mate. So much more. There's so much more. There was all sorts of things on there. Your modeling career. All those
things.
Yeah,
bit of that.
Your movie career. That time you was on X Factor. all that's there. But how are you, mate?
Not bad. Not bad. But good start to the day. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm okay. Well, I don't know if it's raining because I closed the blinds, which suggests it probably was raining. but other than that, I'm good. I'm having a good week so far. Very productive. What about yourself? Anything going on in the pipeline?
There's quite a lot. There's quite a lot going on. At the moment, we've just opened our June intake, and it's like that time of the month is just there's lots going on. Lots of people joining the team. Lots of inquiries and stuff, which is amazing. We've got quite a few guest speakers and stuff coming up in this team as well. So that's always a busy time. And we've got that event we'll probably touch on later on coming up in London at the end of the year. So that's it's good fun.
That was such a loaded question as well. I knew some of that. I just You're like, really? Make me relive it again. That's why not.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for those that haven't come across you, mate, like tell people a bit about yourself and your sort of journey so far.
Okay. So I always find these questions a bit tricky because I think, who wants to hear about me sort of thing? It's this weird question, isn't it?
But let's start with me. I do.
Yeah. All right. I'll just let you know.
Yeah.
So I'll focus sort of on how I got to where I am. And it, to be honest, the more I think about it, the more I realize that this started years and years, decades ago. I'm nearly 30 now. So my whole life, I've kind of been in and around schools. So my mum was a dinner lady and a cleaner at primary school. I was one of 4 boys, and the school was around the corner from our house. And we were, Dad did the barbecue at the school fair, all that kind of stuff. And we ended up just being quite a big part of the school community. When you have like the 4 Burley boys, there's like a Burley in the school for, a span of like 15 years or something crazy. Like we're all spread out. So
such a great name as well, Burley boys. I like that.
Burley boys. Yeah. I've got a story about one of the school fates. Totally off topic though, but I'll come back to that maybe. But we were in around the school community quite a lot, and to be honest, that's probably why I got into teaching myself. It was just sort of there. And where my mum was a cleaner, I remember all the time I used to spend. I was the youngest by about sort of 4 years, so my older brothers would be able to go out and play and stuff, and I'd stay with mum sort of cleaning in the school, and I'd see what teachers were like after school, which as an 8-year-old or whatever is the most exhilarating thing, because you're like, oh, look at them, listening to their conversations and eavesdropping, and it gives you a real sort of different look into schools.
I just remember that feeling as a kid of like, if you saw your teacher in like a supermarket, it would like freak you out. You were like, what are you doing here? Surely you just live at school.
Yeah. And when we used to leave, I was like, oh, they'll probably just be there till the morning, right?
That's
They're
right,
just gonna
go. They got loads to do. They're like elves, like Christmas elves.
Yeah, exactly. But I saw the background, and I've never really thought about it, but I think that's where my interest in teaching came from. And basically fast forward till sort of end of secondary school, and I wasn't the best student myself by that age. I didn't try very hard. I was, there's lots of reasons for that. But basically, it come to my school placement, when you do sort of year 10, year 11 work placements, and I was told you're not allowed to go into a school. It's going to be wasted on you. So they had like 5 opportunities to go in and sort of be a extra pair of hands in schools. And I was told you can't have it because your behavior is not being great. You're not going to do very well. And we want to give it to these people who getting great grades, doing really well. They want to go into school and they want to be teachers. And at that time, I didn't want to be a teacher. It was just something I was playing around with. It was policeman, teacher, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Anyway, ironically, I ended up being placed in a health food shop, which is bizarre. And then I literally spent that, month or whatever that was at the end of secondary school with, a couple of old dears talking about sort of, this extract and this thing for this aching pain. It was great. And I loved that as well. Yeah. And then after that, after GCSEs were all over, secondary school was over, I thought to myself, well, actually, I do quite fancy going into a school and seeing what it's like. It's quite fun, And so off my own back, you get a bit of a longer summer at that age, don't you? And off my own back, I then went and volunteered. So I did actually eventually get into school as a sort of 16-year-old. And the person whose classroom I was in actually ended up employing me after university because she was the deputy head. So did sixth form, went off to university, qualified as a teacher, came back, and my first ever job was in the primary school that I grew up in.
Whoa.
My first ever classroom was the classroom that was my first classroom.
Wow.
I don't know if I worded that well. My first classroom as a teacher was my first classroom as a child, which was bizarre. I've since actually had a chat with the lady who was my first ever TA, LSA in my classroom, which is just bizarre as well. And yeah, it all sort of came full circle. So that was a really sort of community-based way, I think, for me to get into it. And then, since then I had a teaching career that sort of went on for about 8 years, but I've been in and around schools as an adult for sort of more like 12 years, if you include uni and all that stuff. And that's kind of how I got into teaching. Sorry, very long way around on that one. But then towards the sort of end of my career, probably about two years before I left teaching, which is only about 5 months ago completely, I was in year 6. If anyone's a primary school teacher, they know what that's like. It's the SATs year. This was the year just before COVID, and things were tough. Like I don't probably talk about it enough, but things were really, really tough. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. A lot of that was placed on myself by myself. And things weren't in a great place. And then I broke up with my partner of 5 years, which was tough. My LSA, who I'd only been with that year, really, she was a very sort of grandma figure. She was lovely. She became a nan basically. She went off with cancer and passed away that year. So it was a lot in that year, right? Really,
that's
really
a
sort
lot.
of tough year. And that's when my personal health and well-being just got to the pits. It was bad.
Can I just ask, all that stuff happened just before the pandemic?
Yep, academic year before.
So you went through a year like that, and then the pandemic. Mate, that's a lot. Yeah. That is a lot.
And at the time, the funny thing is at the time I didn't give that any recognition.
No, you're in it, aren't you?
Keep going. And I found myself basically, newly single, going through that. The SATs happened, huge amount of pressure. And that year we had, lovely children in that cohort, absolutely wonderful children, but they would, in terms of ability, that, it just happens sometimes. You just get a cohort of children who just aren't up to the national standard, which again, without getting into politics on that one, we'll get to that later, which is an awful thing to say and an awful thing for a child to feel that they're not up to standard. But you just get that sometimes. And so the results weren't great and this, that, and the other. And we'd all worked our absolute butts off the whole year. So it was quite upsetting. And then basically it was towards the end of that year, I think it was around SATs. It might have actually been just after SATs. I had a child who found it, and any teachers listening will kind of be able to put themselves in this position. I had a child who found it very difficult to regulate their emotions. And it was a point of development the whole year, and we were really getting somewhere. But this child, really struggled with the SATs. Probably, if we were able to, would have had a 1-to-1 with him. Really, really struggled with his regulating his emotions. Something happened at break time, and he came in, and I dealt with it a million times throughout my career. Nothing different. In my mind, obviously, in the background, there's all these things stacking up and all that pressure and all that stress that I hadn't recognized. I ended up having a panic attack in class. And I only ever had one, which was in Thailand, a few years before, and basically didn't know what it was. You know, when you don't know what a panic attack is, it is scary.
And this happened in front of the children, or
In front of the children, just come in,
man,
all sat down, and your heart's going, the pain, the panic.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I've got this weird thing about my breathing. I'm like, if I ever cough too much, I'm a bit like, oh, what's going on? Which sounds a bit weird.
No,
but it's
not at all.
You know, symptomatic and all these other things. And basically I was just sheer panic. And obviously this was the year when my LSA had passed away. So it was just me in the classroom. You know, not that she could ever have been replaced, but in terms of a job position, she was never replaced. And I literally walked out of the classroom, was like, walked across my co-teacher opposite, who's my year leader, and sort of said, I've got to go lie down. And she just kind of looked confused, because, you know, it's not something you do as a teacher. You don't just walk out. And I was just, you know, couldn't breathe, heart rate, all that horrible stuff, and ended up lying on the sofa in the staff room, calmed down a little bit, didn't know what was going on still. Was basically went to see the deputy, was sent home, bit worried, called 111. They said, we'll send a paramedic. I said, I don't need a paramedic. Please don't. Wouldn't take, obviously, you know, they don't take no for an answer, rightly so. In my living room, all the machines on me, ECG, all that kind of stuff. They said, you need to go to the hospital. Went to the hospital, more tests, blood tests, this, that, the other. And basically the doctor, this is, you sort of fast forward 6 hours now, the doctor said, your heart rate's better than mine. You know, this is better than mine, because I calmed down. And he went through the usual questions, caffeine, and he said stress. And I was like, yeah, I'm stressed. I'm a teacher, like, you know. And he said, well, that's probably what it is. He's like, you probably have too much going on. And that's the first time in my life I'd ever connected a mental cause with a physical symptom, because in my mind, I just never had experienced it. And it wasn't something, and since that point, things have been spoken about much more widely. It was never something that I had experienced or knew about. And then it was at that point I was like, right, I'm into health. I enjoy it. I like running. I've done a triathlon. I like going to the gym. I like, you know, nutrition is interesting to me. I'll do a nutrition qualification. And over the next sort of year or so, it developed into, right, I'll become a nutritionist. Then I'll start to work with teachers. And I met the media bros and all of that stuff. And we were like, right, we'll go into helping teachers. And then it evolved in there. And I was doing that full time whilst being a teacher, went part-time, and now I've left. But that's my whole life story. You did ask, Johnny.
Well, I mean, I said to the media bros the other day, I said, like, the way that you've niched is either absolute genius or madness. It's one of the two, because it's like, you know, who even thinks to do that? But my goodness, what a great decision, like to actually focus on helping that particular demographic of, you know, or collection of people, like teachers. I just think it's amazing, and so pleased that you're seeing success with it, because I've got quite a few friends that are teachers, and in some ways I look at myself as a teacher. You know, I'd like to teach self-development. But going back to what you said before, have you ever read the book Chatter by Ethan Kross?
No.
Because he talks about a study in there, what they did, they used an MRI to test the sort of the reaction to physical and emotional pain. So what they did, really, really cruel, they took people that had been in a relationship of more than, let's say, 12 months, and they had basically broken up with them, and they put them in an MRI machine with a picture of the person that they've broken up with, and they just basically did an MRI on him, and it's like, that's savage. That's savage. Harsh. Like, as somebody that's experienced heartbreak, and as you said, you have too, I'm sure. Like, what a horrible thing to do. But they basically did the MRI and looked at the brain and how the brain lit up and what it did surrounding emotional pain. And then they did the same with physical pain, where they simulated somebody holding a hot cup and it burning them. And they said that they were more or less the same. Like physical and emotional pain cause the same physical responses. And as somebody that I've had physical reactions to emotional pain before, and it's very, very real, very, very real. So for you to make that connection there is something special, especially at that age. It took me a lot longer, unfortunately. But I mean, that's a heck of a story, mate. And like I said, you know, the fact that you've niched down to help teachers. I mean, I can't think of anybody at all more qualified to help someone and support people in that position. But I mean, what actually happened within you and yourself for you to decide to leave the teaching industry? I recognize you had the panic attack, and that must have been quite a sort of motivator towards it. But what actually made you niche down so much into taking that brave step of helping teachers and coaching teachers?
Yeah, so that's a good one. In reflection, it should have been an instant logical step for me, because I should have gone, oh, this plus this is a great idea.
Yeah.
But I think it was that event particularly sort of sparked it. And then again, if you're a teacher, you'll know what it's like, the staff room chatter about diets and exercise plans and this, that, and the other, and cutting out carbs and going to Weight Watchers and all these approaches that people take. And again, everyone's got to go through their own journey. Everyone's got to try different things. Everyone's got to find what works for them. So there's absolutely zero judgment from me, but there's just a lot of sort of staff room chatter about diets and weight loss. So I noticed that, and I noticed that a lot of my colleagues were complaining about, not complaining, that's the wrong word, sorry. We're talking about sort of feeling, out of breath during PE lessons, or just not being happy in themselves, or being, energy, massive one, having low energy, relying on coffee, relying on biscuits. And at this point, I was sort of doing my nutrition qualification. So I was really starting to kind of understand nutrition. And it wasn't just a nutrition quality, I'm a qualified nutritionist, but it was nutrition and coaching. So as then the coaching brain starts to come in and develop, and you're listening to people. So you're asking them a question, and I'm like, why is that? Or, why do you think that? Or where did you learn that from? And you have these conversations, and basically I came to the conclusion, and then I met the media bros. So at this point, I'd started a company called Forge Nutrition and Fitness. I was working with friends and family mostly, and friends of friends, a lot of who, obviously, my partner's a teacher, uni friends. I'm a teacher, was a teacher myself. So a lot of these people were teachers. I just never connected the dots. And then I started working with the media bros, and on business development and things like that. And they said, well, you're not kind of seeing this. Like, well, what? And they're like, well, you're working with mostly teachers. You are still a teacher. You're talking to teachers every day. You've been a teacher for nearly a decade. You've been around schools your whole life. Like, what about teachers? And I was kind of like,
was that Jake?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. And I was kind of like,
actually sounds like him.
Yeah. I was kind of like, oh yeah, that's a good idea, isn't it? And
I thought of it.
yeah. Now it's my idea. I'm taking that. But I was like, that's a really good idea, because, and I say this to people all the time, often when I chat to people who want to come into the team, I say, just out of interest, like, why me? Because I'm always intrigued. There's a million and one PTs, coaches, online coaches, and it's a quite unregulated industry, as and there's a lot of rubbish out there. There's a lot of the standard could be improved. And to have, in my opinion, if I had me when I was 23, 24, 25, I know that I would be in a better place. So I want to be the coach that I would have benefited from, I think.
First off, that's a lovely way to look at it. What a lovely way to look at it. I really like that. Like, I want to be the coach that I needed. Yeah. That's a really nice way to look at it. But do you feel that if you'd had someone like you, that maybe, I know you can't really say, but do you think there would have been a good chance that you wouldn't have got to that stage where you had a panic attack?
Yeah.
100%.
I'm pretty certain of it, because gone.
Well, no, I just imagine you having a conversation, and just like, even then, you saying it out loud, all the things that happened to you preceding before the panic attack. It's like there's this almost like this moment happening that you can see going on. But that's how life is. Like, life just keeps stacking things on top of you indiscriminately until you feel it, until you have to acknowledge it. And what you had going on was a heck of a lot, and it's so amazing to hear you acknowledge that, and to sort of be working towards helping others with the same issues. So I love that. So it was a brave decision to niche down, because I mean, I would have never thought of that. That's it's brilliant. And I mean, how have you found it so far? What's the response been to you working with teachers?
It's been absolutely phenomenal. Like, it couldn't, I was saying to my partner the other day, like, it couldn't have gone better. And I don't mean that from a business point of view. I mean that from how helpful it's been to people. And as you know, Johnny, right, we know each other a little bit now. I find it really, really, really hard, and it's a teacher trait, to pat myself on the back. I find it near on impossible to say, well, that was quite a good job. Like, well, that's all right. But at the moment, I'm having a lot of members of the team kind of come to me and just say these things. things like, you've changed my life, things like that. And it's really, really hard because when you know that people are having that, when people are telling you you're having that impact and you know that you're doing that job, do you know what I mean? But you're then not patting yourself on the back. It's a really hard thing. But any teachers listening, you all know exactly what I mean. Like, you work unbelievably hard day and night. The thought of your class doesn't leave your mind, or your children in your school or whatever, never leaves your mind, but you still find it really hard to give yourself a pat on the back. And every teacher will know that feeling. So it is going really well. It's been really, really well received. It's lovely to hear like the team sort of talking about how they're getting on at the moment and stuff. And, this isn't a new thing. The business has been going for a few years now. But like I said, I've only really sort of been fully into it for 5 months. Before that, I was part-time. And before that, I was running it literally evenings and weekends. Like, you know what that's like. I'm sure you've done that. It's a hell of a lot of work. But yeah, no, it's been really, really well received. And we're starting to look at how can we get into the lives of every teacher, and what can we possibly put together that is going to help every single teacher in the country. Because in my mind, my goal was, again, this is like last year, 100,000 teachers. And that was a crazy goal, would never happen, blah, blah, blah. But now I look at the team and how the team is growing. We're running that event in London for Teachers' Health and Wellbeing, the first event of its kind. Nothing like that exists yet. And I'm thinking, well, surely we've got the power to reach every teacher. Like, it's got to be, like, it's surely got to be possible.
Mate, I don't know how to articulate this, but like, you are the teacher's health coach. You actually are, though. That's the thing. You actually are. You're well-meaning. You're educated. You're now building this team because you're going to need a team. I've worked with so many successful people, and one of the biggest things they try to do in the beginning, always, is they try to do too much on their own, and that tends to not work. So it's nice to hear that you are taking on a team and that you are getting the support, but you really are the real deal, the teacher's health coach. Absolutely. And it makes me, I know that probably it's hard for you to hear. You're like, all right, move on. And I suffer with similar things too. Sometimes when people tell me stuff, I find it like overwhelming, thinking, blimey, it's almost this strange pressure that comes with it. It's a very, very odd feeling. But I mean, I really want to go deep on it. Let's talk about the teaching industry. I mean, as I said, you're the teacher's health coach. There's no one better qualified in my eyes to talk about these things, but specifically well-being of teachers. What do you think, let's say, the top 3 fundamentals that have been unhelpful or had an unhelpful impact on a teacher's well-being? What do you think they might be?
Yeah, this could be a long list.
Let's go with top 3.
Top three.
Yeah.
I think, and again, I want to preface everything that I say about the teaching industry and education industry. I want to preface everything with I'm not in charge of it. I'm not sort of working in government.
These
don't
observations.
have all the answers. It's an observation. I don't have all the answers. I have what I would like to think is a pretty qualified opinion, but this is my opinion. This is also opinions of colleagues and friends who are teachers and members of the team. So this is just an observation. So there will always be things here that people think, what about this? What about this? And when you have a top 3 on a topic like this, you could have your top 3 and you could think, oh, what about that? And that goes to number 1. And then, let's slot this one in. And like I say, it could be a top 15.
It's fluctuating, isn't it, all the time? I mean, things like pandemics coming along, that changes everything. Things get moved around, don't they? And it gets really hard. But thinking about it under normal situations, I suppose, if that's even the right way to frame it.
I get
are the sort of the top 3 fundamental, most unhelpful things? What are the things that have, me, I like to stay away from the word negative. But what's had a really unhelpful impact on teachers in the last?
I'd say, and I think everyone can agree with this, I think the workload at the moment, and I'm the same as you, I don't want to be, just complaining about things, because I understand why sometimes we do, and we all complain, but workload is something that has grown within my career. And like I said, it's an 8-year career. I've got members of the team who have been teachers for 25 years, right? They've been in it much longer than me. And they tell me that the workload, the amount of different tasks that a teacher is now responsible for, and the level of that task, and sometimes the tasks that are added to that list, which are actually completely unnecessary, has grown and grown and grown. Like even in my short 8-year career as a teacher, when I left at Christmas time, your sort of daily workload has probably doubled. Like
what does it look like?
Ridiculous.
What does a daily workload look like for
now you're asking a question, Johnny.
teacher?
So I'll try and be concise on this one, but just imagine, right? You've got 30 children in front of you. So you've got the 8:30 to 3:15, right? So that's your actual job. So you've got actually being in front of the children, constantly fueled by not necessarily adrenaline, but sometimes you are, sometimes you'll just get up and go, and you're on your feet most of the time, you're talking, you're giving, you're on the go from 8:30 till 3:15, and that's your job. But within that job, you've also got the actual care, the safeguarding of the children, you've got the actual workload of teaching, right? That mental sort of stress and strain. Then you've got 30, 25 to 35 typically little ticking time bombs, because they're people, right? They're little people. You don't know how they're going to feel. You don't know what they're going to do, what they're going to say. So teachers make tens of thousands of decisions throughout their working week. So your brain's constantly doing that. And then I could go on about that for ages. You've then got sort of PPA time in that sometimes, and all this, that, and the other. And then you've got things that you don't know are going to happen. You've got curveballs. You've got a child coming in whose hamster's passed away. You've got parents who might have just recently split up, and you've got that to sort of manage. You've got parent complaints potentially. You've got your emails. So that's just the 8:30 to 3:15, right? So in there, you've probably got about 2 full-time jobs.
Yeah.
But on top of that, you then got the planning for all of that. You've got the assessment, the marking and the assessment. You've got data drops, so filling in sort of trackers and spreadsheets, depending on, and again, this is all flexible depending on the school. You've got parents' evenings, you've got residential trips that sometimes you have to plan for, or to school trips you have to do sort of risk assessments for.
Yeah.
You've got, you might be in charge of a subject, you might be a year leader, you might have parents' evenings. It's a phenomenal amount of work. I would honestly argue, a lot of teachers I know will work sort of 60-hour weeks regularly, because I was chatting to someone yesterday. She said, my school day is 11 hours. I'm in school for 11 hours a day. And then sometimes I come home and I do work in the evening. And that's not like a one-off. I used to have 10, 11-hour days every single day.
Wow.
For the majority of my career. And then you're sometimes working Sunday evening, you're planning the assessment. And any teacher listening will say, what about this? What about this? I've missed loads off there, Johnny.
Homework, all sorts of stuff, like marking homework, all that sort of stuff.
All that stuff. And then you're not even sort of putting in there the emotional sort of toll and the mental toll that the profession takes on you. And it is an amazing profession. It's a passion and it's a vocation for almost every teacher out there. It really is a passion, which is why people give so much of themselves to it. But it does come at a cost, or it can come at a cost. The other thing I didn't mention there is PPA, so sort of planning, I think it's planning, preparation, and assessment time is, I'm not going to get this exactly right, but I think for an hour's lesson, it works out to be something, I think it's like 2 minutes of planning, prep, and assessment time. It's like 2 minutes or 5 minutes. So for every hour you teach, you are given 2 minutes to do that.
Wow.
That's the equivalent. That's the ratio of teaching time to planning time. Yeah. It's a little bit different in secondary schools, but then secondary schools often have exam pressures, mock pressures, other responsibilities. And most teachers are subject leaders as well. So I was lead of geography.
Right. Yeah. Like PE and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got that. You've also got sort of moderations of work. You've got, shouldn't have asked me, Johnny. You've got trainings, you've got CPDs, you've sometimes got twilight sessions, so you might be in school till 7 o'clock.
Yeah, after school homework clubs,
all that stuff, boosters. Yeah. So
games.
It's a lot. I would honestly argue, when you look at it, it's probably the equivalent of 2 jobs worth or more. You could probably say 3 in some ways.
When I hear all that, it's like if someone was trying to train someone to neglect themselves, that would be the way they would do it. Like everything you've just told me is pushing and nudging that person, whoever that person is, to neglect themselves. They almost are educated to believe that there's no time for them, because where is you in that? When are you eating? When are you sleeping? When are you spending time with friends and family? When are you doing any of that stuff? You can't possibly have the capacity to even think about that sort of stuff, because you've got these very, like you say, you're in charge of, say, 30 little lives, with parents that are like, make sure you do this for my kid. And obviously every parent must come to you believing that their kid is the most important, obviously, you know what I mean when I say that, because that's the way parents are. And then, I mean, I didn't even ask, and I don't know if I should, but I mean, that's even before you throw things like neurodiversity in there as well, because there is a growing diagnosis in things like ADHD, autism, all sorts of things, and these are very, as somebody that has a son who's autistic, these are things that need to be thought about, because those little ticking time bombs, they're when there's neurodiversity in the equation, it's very different again, and it's even more unpredictable. So
when you say that, when I say you're teaching a lesson to 30 children, you're not teaching one lesson. With differentiation for different needs and support, bearing in mind that there is no way that every child gets the support they need, and I know parents won't want to hear that, but with the way the funding is at the moment, with the way schools are set up, not every child can get what they need, because you're asking it from one person. You haven't got 6 members of staff in most classrooms, right? Not in mainstream anyway.
No.
So you're that one person is being asked to teach 4 or 5 different lessons.
Yeah.
Simultaneously.
Wow. So that was number 1 fundamental unhelpful. Let's go on to number 2.
That will be in there. That I reckon if you did a survey, that would probably did I say that right? That would probably be number 1 for most people.
What, workload?
I think it would be. And again, that we'll come back to. I don't know if you want to chat about sort of changing that, but we'll come back to that maybe. Number 2 would be probably the culture in a school.
Right.
And again, say again.
What does that mean? Culture in a school.
Yeah. So, I mean, my culture in my team has taken so long to build. And what a culture is,
right?
It is how people feel being part of your community.
Right.
And culture is hard to define, I think, but it comes from communication. It comes from trust.
Yeah.
It comes from openness and honesty. And basically, people need to feel seen and heard and listened to. They don't need to feel like decisions are happening beyond them, which is, don't get me wrong, I have absolutely no wish to ever be in the shoes of any head teacher or deputy head, because it is a really painful job. There's so much that goes into it, and you can't, as a classroom teacher, you can't just blame your SLT, your senior leadership team. It is everyone's responsibility to help adopt that culture. And sometimes I think leadership get a really bad rap because it's almost like they're in control of education, and it's like, well, hang on, well, the local authority or your multi-academy trust or your CEO of your trust or the Department for Education, there's always a starting point of this stuff, and it's not your senior leadership team. But at the same time, it's a responsibility that is taken by someone. But that culture, I think, is how people feel. It's how your school is gelled together.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way I can put it. It's a really, really hard one to put into words. And I did once have a phrase, I've totally forgotten it, which is pointless to mention. But if you talk for a bit, it might come back to me.
No. I mean, the culture, as you say, the communication, the trust, and from what you say, in the acknowledgement of us being a team, or the team in general. I mean, it's leadership is tough.
Yeah,
leadership is something that needs to be taught. In most cases, some people are natural leaders. However, those natural leaders, sometimes there can be issues around ego, but leading is a very difficult thing to do. It's very difficult because you don't necessarily know the needs of the person. They might not communicate it or something like that. But like you say, communication, trust, being able to communicate, talking to people don't know what you don't tell them. They just don't. And trust as well. People need to know that, from their workloads, from the things that they're doing, and all that stuff that you just spoke about, they're managing that, and they need support. They need to know that they have autonomy to make decisions for themselves, and to do what's right for them, because that's what will happen. Like, as a teacher, you're on the front line, you're in there in front of the students. And as you say, all it takes is for one poor little kid whose hamster's passed away, or there's problems at home, and that could disrupt the whole class. Now, it's not that kid's fault, but it's also not the other student's fault. It's a very complicated like situation. And as you say, having that support behind you, that culture, like for example, when you had your panic attack, being able to walk out, the first person you saw that was a grown up or a teacher or somebody in part of the school, that must have been like, thank God, because you didn't know what was happening. And then it's like to see someone else, it's like, I need to lie down. Like, you need to do something for me right now. You need to take control of the situation, and that's all part of the culture. That person seeing that one of their colleagues needed help and putting everything else aside and trying to support you. So yeah, I agree. Culture, difficult one to say, as you say. Did it come back to you or not?
No.
Right.
I've got it somewhere on an Instagram post. I'll find it. You put it in the show notes. But I spent ages trying to sum up what culture was, and it is really hard. But culture is one of those things that trickles down from the top. Yeah. And again, it's really difficult because this can't be one person's responsibility. No. But culture does start somewhere, and culture needs to. It will trickle down. So if you look at, again, we're going back to the sort of Department for Education and even to local authorities, you look at how people work and how people do things. That is going to, it's an absolute truth. That is going to be seen in classrooms. How leadership behave is going to be seen in your classroom. But yeah, that's a big one. Culture could probably take up 3 spaces in that top 3 because it's huge, and it's the hardest one to talk about, and it's probably the hardest one to change. Yeah, it really is.
I think because culture is generally aligned with values and beliefs. And what can happen sometimes is you've got many people from different walks of life with different value systems and belief systems, and they all mesh together. And the thing about values is that people, they feel very strongly about it, and it's like, essentially it's their preference on life, isn't it? It's how they would prefer things to be. And then you come into a team and you got to compromise, and that's difficult. That's really difficult. But I love what you're saying. Like, it is about values, and it's about people, what people want to do, and that acknowledgement right there that you just come up with of saying, what will people actually do? We all know what we want to do, but what will we actually do? It's like when we had a garden landscaped a little while ago, and I wanted to put this pathway in, and he said to me, the guy doing it, he said, have you actually thought about where this path's going to go? He said, because every time we've walked over to this building, we've walked across this grass like this, but you want to put this path around the edge. And what he was saying is, am I going to build this path and you're never going to use it and walk across the grass? Yeah. And the point of it is like, what will you actually do? What will you actually do when you're in there? Because that's what you should work with, not what we'd like to do, what you will actually do,
100%.
And I think that's what builds a culture, knowing what people will really do and working with it. It's like working with the tide, isn't it?
Yeah.
Third one.
Ooh, it's hard because the first 2 encompass so many things. For me, I know I mentioned trust in culture, right? But I feel like culture is its own thing. I think trust is such a big issue in schools that it could be its own one. I really, really do. Culture is, like we say, it's all the things we spoke about, and it's being listened to is a really big part of that. But trust can stand on its own because of how many other things it affects. So what I mean by that is it links into lots of other parts of a school's sort of ecosystem. If teachers aren't trusted, and again, it comes right from the top, the absolute tip of the iceberg sort of thing, or the base of the iceberg, should I say, the DFE and all, policy that's written and on a real government level. If there isn't trust in teachers, then we are going to be constantly having to prove ourselves. Yeah. And that's where 50% of the workload comes from. 50% of a teacher's workload is probably proving to somebody else, who, to be honest, doesn't really need to know, proving to somebody else what you're doing. Yeah. So, for example, lesson planning doesn't need these complicated performers and list of objectives and how you're going to hit that objective exactly. And it doesn't need to be color coded. And it doesn't need to have national curriculum links. And it doesn't need to have your resources. It doesn't need to have all your differentiation. It doesn't need to be, alphabetically ordered and, printed on a certain color paper. Your lesson planning is for you to deliver something to the children so that they achieve an outcome. Yeah. If that's written on the back of a Post-it note, does it really matter if the children are having the outcome? So in teaching, because of a lack of trust, and I don't really know where this comes from, to be honest, Johnny. I don't have the answer for that, but it's always been there in my career, but it's got a 10 times worse. But because there's a lack of trust, you're then creating work because of that lack of trust, because you're saying to teachers, right, you need to prove everything you're doing. We need data reports. We need trackers. We need spreadsheets of those trackers, even though you've got them in paper, because obviously, email. Then you've got, parent reports. I know schools that do termly reports. It's a small amount. It's usually an annual report at the end of the year. But I know schools that at the end of each term, they write a full report for every single child. You're constantly proving yourself, and you've got trackers for your daily readers, and you've got trackers for interventions for children who aren't quite meeting a standard. And there is just buckets and buckets of paperwork and red tape because there's a lack of trust. And the thing is that I can't pinpoint where that lack of trust comes from. And I do almost think it is on a government level, but there are definitely schools out there who make that worse. And that's not going to go down well, but they create workload because they don't have trust in their teachers. And I can't even imagine how difficult it is to be a head or, in an ELT, an extended leadership team across a trust. I can't imagine how hard it is, because you do need that. You need to know that people are doing their job.
Yeah.
So you do need some kind of tangible to track that. But I think it needs to be getting back to the roots of it. It needs to be going into classrooms and not walking into a classroom with a clipboard and your glasses on the end of your nose and tutting and shaking your head saying, oh, no, I wouldn't have worded it that way. Your displays aren't color coded. Teachers will love that one as well. It's about going in and actually being in part of that lesson. Like, if you want to know what a teacher's doing, the culture should be, oh yeah, hey Jane, I'm going to pop into your lesson, not this morning because teachers don't want to know that. I'll pop into your lesson next Tuesday. I'll be there by probably about 9:15. No pressure at all. I'm just going to pop in. Is there a group of children you want me to support? Yeah. And you go in and you work with a group of children. You're not there to judge the teacher. You're there to help. And you roll your sleeves up and you muck in and you get involved. And whilst you're there, you might pick up on things that you might be able to constructively feed back to that teacher, who then goes, oh, that's really good. Cheers. Thanks for that. Rather than them getting a performer of, you didn't do this. And I'm not going to swear, but the old, can I say the CRAP word?
You can say well.
A crap sandwich,
Yeah.
This was good. You're terrible at this. This was all right. That doesn't work. Yeah. People still think, give people a crap sandwich and it will go down easier. You need to be on the ground. And I know how hard that is for leadership. They've got buckets of workload themselves, so many pressures, but that comes back to our culture and that trust. So yeah, that would probably be that one. Johnny, I could go on about this for absolutely
mate
forever.
No, I mean, what I just pulled from there is that trust. It feels to me, by the way you're describing it, it's like, it's that community versus competition. It sounds like people are being encouraged to compete against each other, almost like, instead of it being a community. It's like that proverb saying it takes a community to raise a child. And it does. It takes lots of different characters, lots of different ways of doing things, lots of different approaches, and it sounds to me like teachers are being encouraged by things like, oh, well, so and so down there is doing so much better than you, or this is going so much more successful than what you're doing, or have you tried so and so's approach, stuff like that. It's very sort of underhand, but and it's sort of, it feels to me like the objective has been forgotten, which is ultimately that the children need to be safe and be taught what they need to be taught.
Exactly.
That's three very large, so that's workload, culture, and trust. I mean, how do you feel that these issues can be addressed? Have you got any ideas? Or
again, that's probably an even bigger question.
This is a two-part podcast, by the way.
Yeah. We'll be here for 5 hours. I think, like I said, I think when it comes to trust, giving that example there of, maybe a lesson observation, I don't think they should be called observations. Who likes to be observed? Like no one. They sometimes call them drop-ins when they're just for like a few minutes. No one likes to be caught off guard or caught by surprise, right? And again, I know it's there to it's almost there to catch people off guard, so you see what's really going on. But if you're boots on the ground, you know what's going on. If you're dipping out of lessons because there is no pressure, that your staff or the school or whoever it is, talking to people of every single level here in terms of where they are in their career, if people felt comfortable and that culture was positive, they wouldn't mind you popping in. They'd be like, oh, thank goodness they're here. They can help out, you know?
Yeah, because you feel like you're on side. You're like you said,
you're a team.
You've got all that workload, all of that culture that's sort of driven towards self-neglect. And then you've got this other thing, this guy who's going to come in and make sure that you're doing this impossible job right.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, this person, I should say. But yeah,
exactly.
Crazy.
I think that's it. And I think the other thing, a really tangible thing that, and I've said this to a few heads, and they've, you know, this is the thing I've said to you before, I think, Johnny, advice needs to come from the right person, said in the right way at the right time, and you need to be in the right place to receive that advice. Because I can turn around to you and say, oh, Johnny, not sure about that beard, right? You know, I love your beard. It's looking great. I could say, you know, not sure about that. And you'll go, your back will go up and you go, oh, hang on, what so-and-so, like, you know, try not to swear. What an idiot, you know, coming here telling me about my facial hair. Or
I feel very teary, if I'm honest.
You look devastated. Or, you know, you could be I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example here, Johnny. You could be there itching and scratching, thinking, oh, I really don't know about this. And I can go, well, why don't you shave it off?
Yeah.
I've said the same thing, but it's come at two different times for you in two different ways. And you're in two different places to receive that. So I've had this conversation with heads before. And again, sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't. But I think, and again, it's another really big task. And I know how busy people are, but reviewing what you're asking of staff and staff themselves, this isn't just on the leadership here. This is on you yourself as a practitioner. You know, review your day. What do you do in your day? And sometimes I can't remember what the matrix is called, John. You might be able to remind me, but you know, important, urgent, not important, not urgent, whatever that one's called.
Yeah.
Putting your tasks that you do on the day on the grid and trying to find the stuff that you can get rid of. You know, you either do now, you plan and do later, you delegate, or you get rid of, you know. And I think, and it's hard, you've got to be really critical, go through your day and say, I've just spent 15 minutes of my lunch touching up that display. Does it really need to be done? Or could I benefit more? Not should I, because should comes with guilt. Could I benefit more from having a glass of water that I haven't had since 8 o'clock this morning, actually having a bite of my lunch and going outside for 5 minutes and using the loo and maybe getting a cup of tea? What is, and this is the question, right? What will the children benefit from more?
Yes. That is the question. You're absolutely right.
That's the frame. If you frame everything in that way, wherever you are on the spectrum in terms of job position, job role, whatever you want to call it, if you say what is going to benefit the children more, everything goes through that lens. Yeah. Not what is going to benefit the school governors, not what is going to benefit the stakeholders in the academy, who, you know, don't ever come into the school in most cases, not what's going to benefit our next Ofsted.
You're not here to make friends, are you?
I'm winding a lot of people up today. There's teachers going, oh, he's right. Hang on, what an idiot. He's
I was with you until you said this.
Yeah, exactly. But, and like I said, this is why I preface all this in the beginning, Johnny. This is my opinion. I am not an expert. Well, I'm not an expert. I'm not the person who's going to go into government and change this yet.
You don't know that.
No. Yeah, that put the power of the word yet.
I haven't started working on you yet.
Yeah. Oh, definitely not. No. But you know, it's people are going to be listening to this and they're not going to like what they hear sometimes because it's going to be the advice that they need to hear.
Truth is hard to hear a lot of the time.
And that's the thing. If you want educational reform, which is what we're talking about here, you're gonna have to hear some hard truths. Yeah. You're gonna have to do things you don't like doing, but just on a really sort of basic, you know, classroom teacher level, that was my career. You know, I never went into leadership. Go through that grid, you know, important, not important, urgent, not urgent. Can you do now? Can you plan for later? Can you delegate? Can you get rid? Because you need to be critical. Sometimes as teachers, because it is such a passion, we do sometimes do things, I'm talking from experience here, that we want to do, rather than doing something that we need to do. And what I mean by that is, you know, I had colleagues, and I was myself sometimes, loved my displays, loved my resources. So I would spend hours on displays and resources. Didn't need to do that. Why was I doing that instead of something that had to be done, that was a little bit more boring and was just sort of get it done kind of task? It's because I was almost taking the easy option in a way. I was going to the thing that I kind of wanted to do because it's a passion, because it's a vocation, it's something I like. There are parts of the job that I like, so I'll do those bits first, even though they're not absolutely necessary, because after a tough day with the class, you sometimes want something that's a little bit easier, something that's a little bit lighter. But it's hard because you enjoy doing that. But you need to ask yourself, will it benefit the children and will it benefit you? You know, that's the question you need to ask.
It's that analogy of sorting your own seatbelt out before the others on the plane, sort of thing. I mean, being the gatekeeper of your mind is very difficult. It's a challenging thing to constantly be observing yourself as well as other people. But I mean, I use something quite a lot with clients called the 4Ds, which is do, delegate, delete, and delay. And it's just a nice way to remember, when you get stuff dumped on you, and it's like, first of all, don't accept it. Don't accept it. Go, no, you keep that, I'm good, but like that do, delegate, delete, delay, like that's a nice, like you say, just exactly the same as yours. Like, do I need to do this right now and get it done? Do I need to delegate it to someone else because it's a job that can be easily done by somebody else? Do I need to just delete it? Is it just not mine? Nothing I want to be involved in? Or do I delay it? Can it wait till Thursday? Stuff like that.
That's the thing. Teachers, they're great at wanting to get to the end of a to-do list. To-do lists are infinite.
Yeah.
As a teacher, you'll never see, and it's become a cliche now, to be honest. It's that, and I'll just leave school a little bit earlier once a week, have an early day. Those are the two cliches in teacher wellbeing. Both great, but a little bit sort of overused, not dealing with the deeper problems. But it's true, you'll never get to the bottom of your to-do list. So you need to make sure that I'm not sure if I'm answering your question here, Johnny. You need to make sure that your good enough is good enough, because you'll never be good enough for Ofsted.
No.
When they come in, you will be told things to improve on. You will never be good enough for for some members of leadership in some schools. You'll never be good for enough for the local authority. The only person whose validation matters is yours. And you can try and do the best lessons in the world, have the best displays, be there from 7 till 6 o'clock, have presenteeism coming out of your ears, always there, always present, and we'll come back to that in a sec. But if you're not saying to yourself, wow, it's very ironic and very hypocritical, but if you're not saying to yourself, that was good, like, good job, like, well done, like, fair play, you smashed that, and you're not saying to yourself that was good enough. And even days where as teachers, we feel we always need to be at 100%. There are days where your 100% is going to be relative, and it's going to be actually 40%. There'll be days where your 100% will be, teachers can kill me for this one, 110%, right? It will be like beyond, right? No such thing as 110%. It's true. But you know what I mean? Your best and your good enough will be relative to you. If you just come back from a residential and it's Friday afternoon, the children are absolutely off the wall, you're going to be knackered, and your good enough needs to be lower. You need to be flexible. You need to move that bar. You can't be the same person 7 days a week, 365 days a year, because that's not how we work as people, particularly as teachers. Because I always say to the team, you've got pinch points in the year, and this is something else that people can do to sort of help resolve these issues. They can think about where the pinch points are. So you can map out your year, you can map out your term, you can map out your half term, you can map out your week, even on a daily basis. Where are the pinch points? What's going to happen where things are going to get tough, right? Parents' evening, report writing, you've got a twilight, you're in charge of a staff meeting, worst people to present to.
Or even including like real life events. Maybe your partner's having an operation, or there's something coming up in the year that's going to mean, I don't know, that you're going to have to do the driving, or you're going to have to do the cooking, or something, something's changed in your life. And I mean, 100%. I think you're right. The question was like, how do you feel that the issues can be resolved? And the top one for you seems like it was review, but reviewing with sort of learning what actually is going to help people. Like, not just going in and making a review, something that, we do a review every month. Like, no. What did you get from it? Let's actually do it as a review to help people in what they're doing. And these things are very often going to be simple. It's going to be, can I get a bit of help? Can I get a bit of time? Can I have a minute, please?
That's it. That's it.
Like I meet so many. So I'll tell you what I noticed. It's a weird thing I noticed, but there was a time when my wife used to live somewhere else, and on that estate was a lot of teachers. And I remember being at a barbecue, and it wasn't until like I was barbecuing and I'd spoken to the third, maybe fourth teacher that evening, and all of them were dying for a wee. And I was just like, why are you standing there doing the wee dance? Like when you could just go, and it's just like, I've just got so used to holding it. And I thought about that, and I thought, if you can't address like the urgency to go to the toilet, that is a fundamental need, right? That is something that you need. There's no doubt about it. Like your body is sending you a very clear message, time to empty the bladder, but you chose to ignore it. If you're doing that on that basic level, what are you doing elsewhere in your life? What else are you ignoring? What else are you putting off? You know? And I think it comes right back around again to teachers' well-being, like looking after themselves as individuals, which to some degree is influenced by external factors, but is also really something that people should be owning, you know? And now I said that, you didn't.
So
you know,
I won't get the comments. I won't get the backlash.
No, but that's the hard thing, isn't it? It's like when it comes to, and I don't love the word positive, but when it comes to positive and permanent change for the better, you know, things happening for the better, the first step is acknowledgement. The second step is ownership. It's okay, what out of this situation can I take control of? What out of this situation can I take ownership? How can I, you know, help myself in this situation? Yes, there's always going to be other people involved, other organizations involved, bureaucracy, whatever it is. But there is so much of your life that you have control of yourself, you know, so much of it. And people don't realize that, because by the sound of it, they're being beaten down by a very, very heavy workload. You know, and you know, one of the things that I'm not even going to go into it, because I'm pretty sure it's a whole podcast on itself. But burnout in the teaching industry is like, it's almost comical. It's like you've got to be kidding me.
It's unbelievable. It's like we've currently got a teaching bucket with a bunch of holes in the bottom, and the government solution is to pour more water in it. Put more adverts on the TV, which, I don't know if you've seen one of the adverts, but there's a secondary school teacher and he walks out the school with the children. What world is he on? I want to go there. What world is he living in? He puts his satchel on and he goes out in the sunshine with the children. Yeah,
it's the same with the my brother says a similar thing about the Navy adverts. It's like, he says, like, it's like selling an idea that's potentially not real. But anyway, that's another thing entirely. I was speaking to a Navy person at some point, I'm sure. But I mean, you know, we'll move forward. There's so much there, and as you say, the more I hear, the more I'm like, I want to ask a million questions, but we'll never stop talking, will we? But I mean, here's the big thing. I mean, what impact has the pandemic had on teachers' health and well-being, do you feel?
I'll try and be a bit more concise with this one.
Well, let me just say before that, I know the impact that it's had as a parent. You know, during lockdown, good luck finding a parent that doesn't hear the word homeschooling and instantly want to drink. Like, it was the best efforts of any school and any government, but it was a nightmare. Homeschooling was a nightmare, but I've since spoken to teachers and heard a different perspective, and it is very interesting. So I'll ask the question again: what was the impact of the pandemic on teachers' health and well-being?
So I think for me, obviously you've got things like fear over their own safety. But once I actually feel, just from my school, and again, this is not a generalization, just talking about my school. Once we sort of got into it and children started to come back into schools, and sometimes teachers weren't in those classrooms. You know, sometimes it was TAs, LSAs, HLTAs, so like learning support assistants, higher level teaching assistants, sort of support staff. Sometimes they were quite often actually running the class whilst the teacher was in another room homeschooling or remote teaching, should I say, remote teaching the children at home. And that was also being beamed into the classroom with the key worker children who are in school. That's one setup that might have been happening. Sometimes the teachers were teaching live to the key worker children and the children who were invited into school, whilst being recorded for the children at home. So there's all these different setups, most of which included Microsoft Teams, Google Classroom, Zoom, all these other sort of platforms. But basically, whoever you were in school, you were doing multiple jobs at once. You were doing 2 jobs at once. So once that had kind of come back in, and there's like three lockdowns, so it's hard to remember which one was which. Once that had happened, people's fear of actually becoming ill, typically speaking, did sort of go down a little bit in most cases. Obviously, some people were still very, very scared, rightly so. I was quite anxious. I knew members of staff at my school who were still very, very anxious. So that impact of the pandemic there was felt then and there, that health impact. And I know lots of people are still feeling that today. COVID hasn't disappeared. There's still COVID in classrooms, and lots of members of staff are still very, very anxious about it. So not to sort of put that down, that's still a valid point. So that's one impact, the sort of health. I don't know how to word that really, but just the worrying about, the anxieties around health and COVID. That's definitely one. The other thing I would say is the big one for me that I'm still experiencing with all my clients, pretty much 100% of them, is the accessibility. So teachers have always been, in my career, growingly accessible. So at one point early on in my career, the parents were then given our school emails. So you're then getting emails from parents. Then the pandemic happened, and then your children can access you via Microsoft Teams or Google Classroom, or they can send you an email. Some schools, the children had your email, or you're using Seesaw or some of the other software that's like a bit of a portal for the parents and the children. So teachers have never been more accessible. But the worrying thing is it wasn't like we went back into class and people were like, should probably switch this off now, and they're back in class now, let's give teachers a break. Most of them are still going. Most schools still use things like Google Classroom, Microsoft Teams. They still use those things. So teachers are now, in some schools, accessible by their pupils almost 24/7 and accessible by parents almost 24/7. And I always say to my clients, you don't need it on your phone. You don't get rid of the app, turn your notifications off. And people say, well, yeah, I'd just like to know, what's worse, having it on your phone and it going off at 9:30 when you and your partner are trying to relax, or going off on a Sunday morning and waking you up? Or is that worse? Or is the fact that you might miss an email from a parent worse? Like, you need to learn when a teacher's contracted hours, very, very funny. A teacher's contracted hours, I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's minimal. It's literally, I think it's like 5 hours a day because they don't class your lunch break, or it's 6 hours a day. That's your contracted time. So from what I said at the beginning, you can see how much time is actually out of contract.
Yeah.
Tens and tens of hours a week, right? So that's probably it. It's probably the accessibility of teachers has never been higher. And so people feel like they need to be constantly on demand, constantly on the go, and constantly accessible. For me, that has been the biggest impact, because that then goes into, how do you do your homework? Well, it's no longer sending home a sheet. If that's what your school do, you're now setting it on Google Classroom, and then you've got to check it, or you're now using, like Sentry Tech, great bit of software, by the way. But now you're at home on a Saturday night and your partner's gone out, and you're sitting there thinking, could just do that. Let's log on, to have a little look. And you log on and you're working on a Saturday night. And it's not the fault of a teacher, but it is your responsibility. And this is the thing, everything we've spoken about today, it's not the fault of a school how the state of education is, but it is definitely their responsibility to do something about it. Yeah. And it's hard to hear, even though something's not, you didn't cause this, it's still on your shoulders to fix. That's really hard to hear.
Yeah. No, and that's why I said it earlier, because that accountability, nothing will change until you take responsibility for what you can. But what you just said there, I mean, fear, health concerns, accessibility, they're massive things. That accessibility at the end, it's basically exposure, isn't it? Like you've exposed a vulnerability to the teachers. Now that not only do they have to answer to, I don't know, their boss or whoever, the head teacher, however it works, they're now answering to students and now parents as well. I can't tell you how many clients that I've supported with their anxiety, and one of the biggest changes they made was they took all non-essential notifications off their phone. That's the only action they took in the beginning. So when they're sat in the car, when they hear a beep every second from Sky News, from Twitter, from BBC News, from Instagram, normal messaging, email, on and on and on and on, and all these things, like, think about what it is. It's an alert. That's what it does. It alerts you. It puts you in a state of alertness. It requires an action. Like that thing's just not singing away for fun. It wants you to do something. And it's like, as a parent, you might have, the demands of your children, the demands of your partner, but you're also a teacher, which means you've got the demands of the school. Now you've got this bloody phone going off all the time. And it's just like, I can't imagine the level of anxiety that would cause.
And that's the thing, like in that pandemic, you got to remember that there was a time where teachers, I said about their sort of the online learning thing, online teaching. You've got to remember there was a time where I was in this room with my desk slightly different place, teaching from this room. I was teaching in my house. So I know that obviously everyone was working from home. Don't get me wrong. Vast majority of people were working from home, but a lot of people have sort of returned to this new normal or this hybrid way of doing it, or they're chosen to stay working remotely, but they go to a coffee or whatever. But teachers are now back in person, and in some ways a lot of us are still working at home. And we always have done. We always, I know people that will bring home 60 books every single week. And every single week, their Sunday morning, they'll wake their children up, set their children up in front of the TV, or again, that's not something, I'm not bashing parents of that. I'm not a parent, and I definitely, that would be my go-to. I couldn't think of anything harder to manage. Or they'll set an activity up for their children, or the children go out and play in the garden, whatever it is, and they'll be sat there Sunday morning, cup of coffee, doing their work. And this is such a hard thing, and I genuinely feel that you don't know what it's like to be a teacher until you have walked in those shoes. Because people give teachers such a bad rap, saying, "Oh, you're whinging all the time, you get good pay, and you get your holidays." And actually, when you, like I said earlier with that working week, when you work out how many hours teachers spend working over the course of a week, and you work out how much they work during the holidays, go and set their classroom up, doing extra marking, doing whatever, planning, medium-term planning, whatever it is they're doing, teachers don't have that holiday. Most teachers, some teachers are great about it, and I love that, but most teachers will work at some point during that holiday. That's their choice and how they choose to do things. But when you actually think about it, when you look at the holiday they actually get, when you take all that out, and then you sort of take those working hours during the normal week and you spread that out over the year across what would be the holiday, they get probably the same amount of holiday as anyone else.
You're right. And that's the point. That's the point of this podcast episode. It's to the self-development podcast is about helping everybody with their self-development. And, this is all spurred from talking to you many times, and we've done some work together, and we'll work together again. And so I'm really beginning to understand some of the challenges that are there for teachers. And, I heard this definition the other day of anxiety, and it's the awareness of infinite possibility. And I just thought, someone's knocking on your door.
Sorry if you can hear that, guys.
No, the awareness of infinite possibility, isn't that like the most terrifying, And now you've got teachers that are like accessible all the time with the biggest workload ever. Their culture doesn't support them. They're not feeling like they're trusting, they're being encouraged to compete against each other instead of building a community. And it just feels like a very unsustainable situation. Like you're saying, something must change. It has to. You know?
I think the latest statistic that I saw was 52% of teachers are strongly considering leaving the profession in the next couple of years or next 3 years, or don't quote me on that, but it was 52%, and it was basically that half. I think there's about 600,000 active teachers in the UK, I think. Again, don't quote me on that. But you're talking 300,000 people potentially leaving their profession. Like this isn't like, oh, someone's whinging about, they didn't get their, I don't know, their day off, or they didn't get that early finish on a Friday. This is 300,000 people. That is bonkers. And the problem is this is a pandemic of its own within education. And again, go on. No,
go ahead. Sorry.
I'm not going to get political about it, but it is all political. Let's be honest, it is all political. But without talking about my own sort of political biases and things like that, we need reform, and we need a government that stands up for education, not a government that cuts funding and has done for quite some time. And we need we need people in this country who are going to support the public sector.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I mean, you talk about that in the NHS as well. You know, it's like, yeah, it's hard, you know. And my sort of last question really on this before we start talking about what you do as the teacher's health coach is like mental health, like briefly, the mental health of a teacher right now. What's that look like?
It's not good.
No.
It is probably the nicest to hear way I can put about it. Probably 9 out of 10 teachers I talk to about maybe joining the team, or I spend hours a day just chatting to people on Instagram, Facebook, just having conversations. Usually before and after school, obviously teachers aren't there in the corner. So
that would blow your point out of the water.
Yeah. What are you doing, miss? No, nothing. Keep going. No, like, but I do spend a lot of time chatting to teachers, and 9 out of 10 people are struggling, like to a severe degree where they would do with support. And this is exactly why I'm sort of partnering up with Ed Support. Little plug there. But you know, Ed Support, an amazing charity. They are absolutely fantastic. They're unbelievable. They have a hotline for teachers. I'm actually not 100% if it's 24 hours. I don't think it is 24 hours, but they have a hotline where if teachers are not even in crisis, but if you're just feeling like you're getting to that point, they are there to talk to and they understand.
What an incredible thing.
You know, it's such a small charity, a small charity, but it's doing work that nobody else is, and is so necessary. Like I have no qualms about saying that they're saving lives. You know, they have to be. They really, really do. So Ed Support, if you're ever sort of struggling, you know, Ed Support is. I wish I knew they were there. And again, like going back to what I said earlier, that's why I partner with them, because I wish I knew that they existed.
You're an incredible person, mate. You really are. I mean, I'm going to finish up by asking you, what actionable and tangible things can people do for themselves? And how can you, as a teacher's health coach, help teachers? What is it that you can help them with?
Okay. I think with helping themselves, I think, again, acknowledging that it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility, which is very hard to hear.
Yeah.
Really blooming hard to hear, but you need to hear it. You know, it's not your fault, but it is, you're the only person that is going to be able to make that change. Even if there was education reform, the lifestyle that people have lived and the habits they've built up and the way that they think about themselves would stay. And so those are the things that we need to address. Knowing, like I said earlier, knowing that you're good enough is good enough has to be. Doing that review for yourself, you know, the 4 Ds, going through that, reviewing what you're doing for yourself. I think that's a really, really good idea. Asking for support and reaching out, whether that's Ed Support, whether, you know, it doesn't matter who it is. If you are going to talk to a colleague, just do me and them a favor. Just do what I call like a little capacity check with them. So often as teachers, we'll walk into the room and we've always got a teacher bestie, teacher mate or whatever. We walk in and we're like, bleh. Yeah. You know, here's my, like you said before, here's my bag, take my bag, right? Here's my, and we understand why, because it's so heavy, but you need to, you don't know what that person's going through. And you don't know whether they are holding 2 bags right now and you're giving them a third. So do a little capacity check to say like, I need to say something here. Can you hear me? You know, are you going to hear me or are you going to listen? I can never remember which way that comes around, but are you just hearing or are you listening, sort of thing? And do that, because if it's the other shoe is on the other foot, you'd want someone to sort of give you that. And something that's popped into my head, Johnny, that I haven't said yet, but you mentioned something earlier about feeling like it's the smallest thing that tips you over, or you said something along those lines. The analogy that I always use with the team is, it's, you know, teaching is like you're holding 1,000 plates and then someone comes along and puts an egg cup on top and then you drop it all and then you kick yourself about dropping the egg cup, or you kick yourself because oh my God, that egg cup caused me to drop, you know, to drop everything. It wasn't the egg cup that caused you to drop your plates. It was the fact that you are holding 1,000 plates in the first place. Yeah. So knowing that, and that links into sort of, you know, you need to reach out for support. You need to ask for help when you need it, really. Apologies if you can hear that. We've got the window cleaner around, which is probably ruining this audio.
It's not, mate. It's not. No, I like I said, every single time I podcast, the garden starts going off, and you know, all sorts of noise.
Something comes up.
dog barked a minute ago. It's real life, mate. It's real life. You know?
You have to turn my audio down at that point.
So finishing up, how does the teacher's health coach help? How can you help?
So we work with people, essentially, as you said earlier, to feel great in themselves. And that doesn't look like one thing. There is not one thing. You know, we are not just a weight loss program. I'm not a fat loss coach. In fact, I get really offended when people call me that. It's about feeling great in yourself. Notice how I didn't say look great. I said feel great.
Yes.
Two completely different things.
Yeah.
We help people find that balance, balance with teaching, balance with life. It's unbelievable how often people come to me and say, I've got a terrible relationship with food. All I eat is bad food.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, what's a bad food?
No such thing.
Is the devil gone and cooked it up for you? I don't understand. What is a bad food? But this isn't that person's fault.
No.
But it's their responsibility. It's a belief that they have around food. And that balance includes balance around food, balance around exercise, balance around your own mindset, balance around teaching, learning, all that stuff. And we help people to feel great, to find that balance, and as you said earlier, to forge healthier, happier lives. That's it, right? There's two things that we all deserve, and it's to be healthy and happy. Yeah. And I know that before you said happy, I think it was you, but I'm not sure actually. Happiness isn't a continuous state. It comes and it goes and it ebbs and it flows. Yeah. But it's about, I rhymed that. It's about
MC Charlie.
Yep, on the mic. It's about helping people to have more of that in their lives.
Yeah.
Because I'll talk to teachers all the time and they'll say, I don't like myself. I haven't been happy in years. I need to rediscover me. I feel like I'm just mum, dad. I feel like I'm just Miss XYZ, Mr. XYZ. I'm just, sir, miss, whatever. I feel like that's all I am. And the thing, like you said, because teaching is so all encompassing, it does sometimes strip people of their identity.
Yes.
People feel like they're just that.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, not just that as in you're just a teacher. That's not what I mean at all.
No.
When you're a teacher, you're 1,000,001 different things, right? But that's not who you are. You are not a teacher. Teacher is part of you. But people lose that. They lose themselves. And that leads then into sort of their nutrition, their movement, their sleep management, their stress management, which then leads them to maybe feeling uncomfortable in their own skin, maybe having terrible energy, maybe not playing with the grandkids. Yeah. The best thing one of the best things I've ever heard was a client who had, I think their child was about 2 or 3. I can't remember. This was about 1.5 years ago. She'd never been on a piece of play equipment with her child because she felt so self-conscious. She literally said to me, I can't fit in there. I can't fit in the tunnels. I don't have the mobility and the energy to go through the tunnels with my child. And by the end of it, she was playing with her child twice a week on this play equipment.
Oh man, that's really nice.
That doesn't get better than that. It gives you back, and without sounding as cheesy and cliche as I possibly can here. But I guess what we do is we give people back life in a way.
Their life.
That's probably what we do. That's as short as I can make it.
I mean, I hear community, you're creating a community. People do not move forward in a positive direction without community. You can't do it on your own. You just can't. And the annoying thing about that is when you start to get towards that unhelpful place or that uncomfortable place, and you start to experience those difficult emotions, guess what? You want to push yourself away from everyone. You want to isolate. You want to move away from people because the paranoia and insecurities all start, and it's all part of your slowly unraveling health. It's something that happens incrementally. It's like life just takes a little bit more until you find yourself in a place where you feel like you can't handle it. And the other thing you said there was balance. I like to look at it as harmony, because balance suggests that, people talk a lot about work-life balance, but the fact is that would be saying that both of them need to be the same. Yeah. That's not what needs to happen. It's harmony. And it's like, and this is showing my age, but when you have a graphic equalizer, do you know what that is on music? Where it will show you the bass is up, the treble's down.
Oh yeah.
And as you notice, as the song's playing, it's fluctuating. The bass is going up and down, the treble's going up and down, different sounds are making sounds, and this is all going like that. And that's life. That's harmony. You know, things are changing and evolving all the time. You know, you can't have the same attitude at school as you do at home. You can't have the same attitude with your friends as you do with your partner. You know, this is all different fluctuating feelings and emotion. And it's allowing yourself to create that harmony and allow yourself to experience these emotions, good, bad, whatever. They're all there for a reason. There's a reason why you're angry. It's a reaction to an uncomfortable emotion. What is the emotion? Let's spend some time there. I don't want to. Well, there you go. There's a problem. And that's where the community comes in, because you'll go in and you'll say, has anyone else? And they'll say, yeah, me. Straight away, you feel, oh, thank goodness, someone understands. And that has so much value. And that's what you've created. And then the last thing, health, mental, emotional, and physical health. All of these things make a difference. Getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, eating enough food, you know, all these things, activity. You know, all of these things make a difference. And this is what you're providing: community, balance, harmony, health for that particular person, you know, who's having those troubles. And I just think it's fantastic. I have a lot of respect for what you're doing, mate. Really do.
Thank you.
The teacher's health coach who doesn't like taking compliments.
Lucky no one can see how red I've gone.
Oh, mate, it's going to YouTube.
Oh, no. Is it actually?
It is, yeah.
Oh, should have tidied up those boxes in the background.
Yeah, and then there's the makeup. I mean, we'll talk about that after. But
yeah.
But listen, this has been an absolute pleasure, and I could do this again. Maybe we'll do a live on Instagram or something. But what's next for you, and where can people find you?
So people can find me. I'm very, very basic. I'm the teacher's health coach everywhere, but I'm separated with full stops. So the teachers etc. because Instagram handles, everyone's taken one. So yeah, I'm the teacher's health coach mainly on Instagram, to be honest with you, because I like that platform, like to use it. Facebook, I've got a little bit of a presence there. Twitter, I can't even remember what my Twitter handle is. I'm not on Twitter massively, to be honest. I'm not really a big fan of edgy Twitter for myself. But those are the two places. I've got a little podcast. It's nothing like yours, Johnny. I'm not great with it, to be honest. It's sort of an episode once a month if I'm lucky, sort of thing. But yeah, I've got that. If you want to listen to that, it's literally just called Rewriting Wellbeing. The biggest thing we've got coming up is this event in October that I'd like to talk about, if that's all right.
No, go for it. Definitely.
So it's literally coming together as we speak. You know, it's not finished at all, but we've got our venue sorted. Deposits going down soon. So it's in St. Paul's. It's in London. Really nice venue. We've got lots of guest speakers already sort of confirmed. We've got Simon Bolger, who is that wellbeing guy. Incredible. He's come and worked with my team before. We've got Andrew Cowley, who is author of the Wellbeing Toolkit, and I believe the Wellbeing Curriculum is his new book. We've got potentially a few more guests. Who else is confirmed? We've got Jen Foster from Good Morning Miss Foster. If you're on Teachergram, you'll know her. We've got Mitch from Grammasaurus. He's coming to sort of he's our sponsor as well. We've got Mr. Mac, so Dan McFarland. Have I got his name right? I think I did. Who's been on an awesome, he's a teacher, awesome health and wellbeing journey. He's going to come and tell us about that journey. We've got loads of awesome guest speakers, and we've got the capacity for 400 people. Wow. So there's nothing else like this that is health and wellbeing specifically for educators who are in the classroom, that is on a day where actual real life teachers can come, and it's not just head teachers and sort of extended leadership or, you know, CEOs of trusts. It's for the people. And I don't want to sort of, you know, but it's for the people. It's for the people on the ground, the people who need it. These things don't work if it's just a couple of people from a school who go. You know, if the Wellbeing League goes, that's great. But if they go, the messages aren't going to come back in the same way, and they're not going to get the experience of being there. We've got yourself coming, I think.
Absolutely. You won't miss it, mate.
Yeah, no, it's going to be awesome. And we've got loads of other guest speakers coming. It's basically going to cover everything. You know, we built these pillars for the event, and it's self-development with yourself, it's nutrition and movement with me. We've got a running coach coming, Dan, who's going to talk about that and bringing running clubs into school. We've got Simon Bolger, who is school culture and wellbeing. We've got Andrew Cowley, who is wellbeing for schools as well. We've got Jen, who's going to be children's wellbeing. We've got Alfresco Learning, who is getting outdoors, children's wellbeing with nature, adults wellbeing with nature. We've got Dan, we've got all these people, and we're coming to basically put up these pillars of wellbeing for teachers, the different areas of health, different facets of health that we need. That's what the event's all about. It's an expo as well. So you've got an expo hall. We've got free, I don't know what the plural of masseuse is, but we've got a massage company come in who are going to be doing massages all day. We've got breakfast. If you like croissants, you know, grab yourself a ticket. We've got free breakfast, free lunch. We're going for a big old social after. So we'll go for dinner and maybe a couple of drinks if people want to. So it's a whole day. It's an event. It's not a conference. It's not stuffy. You're not coming as a teacher. You're coming as a person who happens to be a teacher. So yeah, big old plug on that one.
Mate, that's
October.
So you said St. Paul's. Obviously, that's not St. Paul's as everyone knows it. Where is that?
No, not in St. Paul's.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's 200 Aldersgate. So it's in the St. Paul's area. There's a sort of a junction roundabout. I think it's the Museum of London or History? I don't know. I'm terrible with London geography, but it's 200 Aldersgate, sort of a big round area. I think it's Museum of London or something is written on the wall outside. Big glass building. But yeah, it's the ETC venues at 200 Aldersgate. 22nd of October 2022, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. 10 a.m. because we want people there rested. And yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be really, really good.
What's it called?
It is called Rewriting Wellbeing.
Rewriting Wellbeing. Cool.
I can't remember. The Wellbeing event for educators. That's it.
If you can't remember, I got a shot, have I?
Yeah, I know. I know.
Mate, listen, this has been fabulous. You're amazing. I get this real sense that you are at the beginning of something very, very special. And that along the way, you're going to collect all the people that you need to make a really significant impact on this. This is a very, you know, we've had some laughs during this conversation, but it's a very serious, very complicated issue. And I think that it needs to be spoken about more. Awareness needs to be raised and support needs to be provided. It's a very serious, these are the people that, you know, I see so many selfless acts from teachers every single day, just with my own children. And I hear them from my friends. Teachers are very, very special. And I know so are nurses and so are doctors and so are police officers. I know all that, but we're talking specifically today about teachers. It's been absolutely lovely to take it in the way I mean it. It's been lovely to hear about what's going on the other side. You know, as I said, I know my experience and my wife's experience and many other friends that dealt with homeschooling, but to see and hear what the impact it's had on the teachers, it's been a real privilege. So thank you for that.
Yeah. No, mate, it's been great. It's been brilliant.
So thanks for your time, bud. And yeah, I'll speak to you soon, I'm sure.
Take care.
Take care, mate.